A very good morning to you. I'm Lee Brown. You're watching A News, and here are your top stories. Gaza peace plan talks to continue as Trump says chance of a deal is really good. The US government shutdown continues after funding measures fail again in the Senate. And Syria announces results of its first parliamentary elections since the fall of Assad. Good morning. We start with our top story. Indirect talks toward a US brokered peace plan to end the war in Gaza are underway in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Israeli and Palestinian officials are holding separate meetings with Egyptian and Qatari mediators to discuss a potential hostage for prisoner exchange, a key first step in the proposed plan.
Delegations from Israel and Hamas held their first day of indirect negotiations in Egypt on Monday on US President Donald Trump's plan to halt the war in Gaza. The main contentious issues are the demands that Israel withdraw and that Hamas disarms. Both have endorsed the overall principles behind Trump's plan, under which fighting would cease, hostages go free, and aid pour into Gaza. And it has the backing of Arab and Western states. US President Donald Trump told reporters that he sees a really good chance of making a deal.
I think we've made tremendous progress. And yeah, the people of Israel wanted to happen, but the people related to hostages, I mean, you see in Israel tens of thousands of people. They really want the hostages back, and they really want things to end. And I think Hamas now has been, all I can say is they've been fine. They've been fine. I hope it's going to continue that way. I think it will. I really think we're going to have a deal. We have a really good chance of making a deal, and it'll be a lasting deal.
Hamas has expressed partial agreement, including releasing 48 hostages, of which only 20 are believed to be alive, and handing over Gaza's administration to a technocratic body, but has not agreed to disarmament or step aside from governance, key US and Israeli demands. It also proposes an exchange for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and full aid delivery into Gaza. International leaders, including the United Nations Secretary General, have welcomed the plan. Iran has also signaled support, while Israeli bombardments continue in Gaza, leaving residents displaced and aid access restricted. The talks coincide with the second anniversary of the Hamas attack on southern Israel, which killed about 1,200 people and left 251 hostages. Since then, Israeli military operations in Gaza have killed more than 67,000 people, including 18,000 children, according to Gaza health authorities. Officials say the initial focus is hostage release, a step that could determine whether the path to ending the conflict becomes viable in the coming days.
Now, it's been 2 years since war erupted in Gaza. From the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, to fragile peace talks in Cairo, here's how it all unfolded.
On October 7th, 2023, thousands of people were celebrating a music festival near Israel's border with Gaza when sirens rang out. Hamas stormed across the border, killing some 1,200 people and taking 251 hostages. Within hours, Israel had declared war. Airstrikes pounded Gaza. Israel said it was targeting Hamas. Entire neighborhoods vanished in days. By November, more than 15,000 Palestinians had been killed, according to Gaza's Hamas-led health authority. The number of dead is now believed to amount to more than 60,000. More than 550 aid workers have been killed, the highest toll in any conflict recorded by the Aid Worker Security Database. A brief ceasefire came in late November 2023, allowing aid in and some hostages out in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. But the truce lasted just 7 days. When it ended, Israel launched its ground invasion of southern Gaza. By early 2024, fighting had moved to Rafah, By spring, over 1 million people had been displaced. The United Nations warned of famine. Israel expanded its military operations beyond Gaza, striking targets in Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Yemen. Both Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Iran-aligned Houthi group in Yemen launched strikes on Israel in response. On September 27, 2024, Israeli bunker-busting bombs hit a Hezbollah complex in Beirut, killing Hassan Nasrallah, the group's leader of more than 30 years. His heir apparent, Hashem Safieddine, was killed weeks later. Israel would also claim to kill Hamas leaders Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif.
The U.S. will take over.
A second three-stage ceasefire brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States came into effect in January 2025. Extensive Israeli airstrikes resumed in mid-March. This year, the IPC Global Hunger Monitor declared famine in northern Gaza, saying that over 500,000 people were at risk. Aid groups said Israel was restricting food and medicine. Israel accused Hamas of stealing supplies. Israel launched an airstrike on Qatar on September 9, 2025, claiming to be targeting top Hamas leaders. Qatar condemned the strike as cowardly and a violation of international law. Less than 2 weeks later, the UK, France, and Canada were among countries to formally recognize a Palestinian state. The United States opposed the move. A US-led 20-point peace plan has proposed a ceasefire, hostage exchanges, and a staged Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted the plan. Hamas largely rejected it.
Now, as the announcement of this year's Nobel Peace Prize approaches, US President Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed over the years that he deserves the honor, citing, among other things, that he stopped 7 wars and that the Nobel Committee would never award it to him. The committee does not comment on nominees, and nominations remain sealed for decades. The 2025 Nobel Peace Prize will be announced in Oslo on October the 10th. Let's take a look back at some of the times Trump said he deserved it.
Nobel Peace Prize? Yes, sir. I deserve it, but they will never give it to me. I ended 7 wars.
I'll probably never get it, but that's okay. They gave it to Obama. He didn't even know what he got it for.
He didn't do anything. I think I'm going to get a Nobel Prize for a lot of things if they gave it out fairly, which they don't. When Obama came to office, they said, we're going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. He actually said, what did I do? I didn't do anything. Well, they gave one to Obama immediately upon his ascent to the presidency, and he had no idea why he got it. And you know what? That was the only thing I agreed with him on. I stopped wars from happening. If it were somebody else, they would have gotten 5 Nobel Prizes. I never even got a mention. But I was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Who give out a thing called the Nobel Prize. He said, I have nominated you.
They like Trump.
Well, the US Senate failed again on Monday to pass bills to reopen the federal government. Both Democratic and Republican proposals failed to reach the 60 votes needed to reopen the government. President Trump warned of a mass layoffs as thousands of federal workers remain furloughed or working without pay. He blamed Democrats and said on Truth Social, I am happy to work with the Democrats on their failed healthcare policies or anything else, but first they must allow our government to reopen. Democrats say any funding bill must protect health subsidies and Medicaid.
371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for the fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a...
Looking to US foreign policy, Donald Trump says he's close to deciding whether to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, a move Russia warns could damage ties with Washington. President Trump said he's sort of made up his mind about supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. He told reporters he wants to know how they'll be used before making a final call.
He also sell them to NATO, let them sell them to Ukraine.
Earlier, we spoke with 2 experts, Dmitry Babish in Moscow and Alexei Haran in Kyiv. Mr. Babish said Trump remains friendly toward Putin despite disappointment over Russia's progress, warning that sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would dangerously escalate tensions with a nuclear power. Professor Haran, meanwhile, said such weapons would greatly enhance Ukraine's defense. Let's take a look.
The strategy is to have enough possibilities to have deep strikes inside Russia. This is very modern weapon, very sophisticated, so definitely it would be helpful to us. Actually, what we are doing now, Ukraine is doing. Ukraine also has its own drones, and recently Ukraine started to use Ukrainian cruise missiles, which are called Flamingo. And these strikes are also important. So we are trying to have deep strikes against Russian energy infrastructure, oil refineries, etc. However, definitely Tomahawk is much, I would say, is more powerful weapon. However, here I would say that it's very difficult for me to imagine now that the United States, given Trump's position in relations with Putin, will provide us with tomahawks. I don't think we should pay much attention to what Putin is saying, because Putin is threatening the West all the time. When he attacked Europe, he said that if there would be any supply of weapons to Ukraine, Russia would continue it as an enemy, this country as an enemy, and will have possibility to respond. And there was no response.
Important relationship between Russia and the United States, simply because these are the two biggest superpowers, biggest nuclear superpowers in the world. So from a pragmatic point of view, it makes sense for Trump to pay attention to what Russia thinks or says. Believe me, no one in Russia is happy about the losses inflicted by our strikes on Ukraine's civilian population. We view this population as our brothers and sisters. We try only to strike military targets, but certainly you know how tragic it is when you have a war between nations with very, very similar histories and with very similar languages. So I would not respond to what Mr. Garan is saying about our evil intentions. I can only say, let's not talk about the past for the moment. Let's talk about the future. The idea that Mr. Zelensky will get Tomahawk missiles, that he will be able to strike Moscow and even the Volga region with Tomahawk missiles is very dangerous. And I think Trump understands it. The main problem, there is also a technical problem with that, because there are only two working Typhoon batteries. Typhoon is a system that allows Tomahawk missiles to be used by US ground forces. So America has very few of these systems, and it wants to keep them to itself. There is a very little chance that Zelensky will get one or even two of these systems which are under Mr. Trump's control. And certainly Mr. Trump is very unwilling to give Ukraine a chance to destroy the Kremlin, to destroy Moscow, to make a really deadly strike at Russia. So I think that sometime before Ukraine gets these missiles.
Now, Syria has announced preliminary results from an indirect vote to form a new parliament, with concerns over a lack of diversity. The election process is a key step in the country's transition following the ousting of former President Bashar al-Assad last December.
Election officials acknowledge a low success rate for women and religious minorities in Syria's preliminary results of its indirect vote for the first parliament since Bashar al-Assad's historic toppling last year. Around 6,000 members of regional electoral colleges cast ballots for candidates from pre-approved lists, a process designed to fill nearly two-thirds of the 210-seat People's Assembly. The remaining third will be appointed later by interim President Ahmed al-Sharaa. But many Syrians and observers warn that suspending elections in parts of the country outside government control risked leaving key communities without representation.
We were keen to form the electoral committees to take into account the form of Syrian society. This means that we must be realistic that there is a diverse form of Syrian society, and this diversity is positive. We took into account in the electoral bodies that the form of the electoral bodies be similar to the form of Syrian society to ensure that they are actually capable of representation. But the electoral process is the outcome of the elections. Even if direct elections were held, we might have faced similar results. These are the results because this is the Syrian reality, perhaps.
According to Reuters, 6 women were elected to the new parliament, 4 of them from religious minorities, including a Christian, an Ismaili Muslim, and 2 Alawites.
We also ensured that the percentage of women in electoral committees exceeded 30% in some places, but it appears that the electoral process produced these results. We've tried hard to support women's presence in parliament through awareness campaigns, but we haven't succeeded. Perhaps this is the Syrian reality. In the next phase, there must be greater awareness raising across Syrian society.
Authorities say they chose an indirect voting system because the country still lacks reliable population data after years of war that killed hundreds of thousands and displaced millions. For security reasons, voting was postponed in several regions, including Kurdish-held areas in the north and the Druze majority province of Sweden, leaving 21 seats vacant. It remains unclear when those votes will be held.
The Syrian army and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, have reached a fragile ceasefire following fierce overnight clashes in several Aleppo districts. Residents reported intense gunfire and explosions in the Sheikh Maqsoud and Ashfariya districts. Authorities say 2 people were killed and 26 others were injured. The SDF, however, denied involvement, calling the reports provocative. Syrian media described the clashes as the most intense since the March agreement, aimed at integrating Kurdish forces into state institutions after 14 years of war. Next up, we turn to the world's most eagerly awaited climate event, COP30, as Brazil scrambles to get the Amazon city of Belém ready for a flood of world leaders. The city is racing against the clock to finish key infrastructure from hotels to conference facilities. Officials insist most projects are on track, but delegates are already feeling the squeeze on accommodation and rising costs.
Just 1 month ahead of the United Nations Climate Summit COP30, Brazil is racing to get the Amazon city of Belém ready to welcome some 45,000 delegates. Heads of state will begin arriving soon, but the infrastructure meant to host them is far from complete. The Leaders Village, a cluster of low-rise buildings for visiting presidents, still has unfinished sections. A nearby 3-story building is only partially built, though its helipad will be ready for conference use. The para-state government says more than 30 public works for conference, including roads, parks, drainage channels and tourist sites, are on schedule, backed by 4.5 billion reais, $84.5 million in investment. Construction is still ongoing on a pier for cruise ships and a terminal for floating hotels, meant to open in July, but only 79% complete. With hotel rooms scarce, delegates are having to get creative, with prices soaring beyond previous conferences. During a visit to Belém last week, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva downplayed worries over the preparations and sought to boost morale, calling the summit a COP of truth, not luxury, that would highlight the Amazon and Para.
Today, leaders from across the Turkish world meet in Gabala, Azerbaijan for the 12th summit of the Council of Heads of State of the Organization of Turkish States. They'll be discussing key regional and international issues, with Azerbaijan set to take over the organization's chairmanship from Kyrgyzstan. Our Aizul Ibrahimova reports from Gabala.
Good morning from Gabala, a historic city in northern Azerbaijan, where the 12th summit of the Council of Heads of State of the Organization of Turkic States is taking place under the theme Regional Peace and Security. Today, Gabala has become the meeting point for the heads of state and government of the Turkic countries, as well as observer states who are gathering to discuss regional and international issues, strengthen cooperation and adopt documents aimed at promoting partnership and development across the Turkic world. This year's summit holds particular significance for Azerbaijan as the country assumes the chairmanship of the Organization of Turkic States from Kyrgyzstan. The transition will guide the organization's upcoming initiatives in areas such as trade, transport, energy, digitalization, and environmental cooperation. The Organization of Turkic States currently coordinates cooperation in more than 40 sectors, ranging from foreign policy and culture to space and artificial intelligence. Today, the eyes of the Turkic world are on this historic Azerbaijani city. The summit is set to bring together voices and visions that will shape the future of cooperation among the Turkic nations. For the latest updates, stay tuned to A News. I am Aysel Ibrahimova with Elbrus Musayev reporting from Gabala.
Now from Gabala, A News spoke with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan about regional cooperation and security as the summit gets underway. His remarks focused on promoting stability through conflict resolution, equal economic cooperation and sustainable partnerships.
Bizim biliyorsunuz dış politikamızın şu anda temel ayağını oluşturan husus bölgemizde.
As you know, the main pillar of our current foreign policy is to establish stability in our region. There are several conditions for achieving stability. First, to calm or end wars and conflicts as much as possible. Second, to develop economic cooperation on an equal basis so that everyone can share in prosperity. Third, to institutionalize relations and regional structures, to make them more sustainable. It is with this perspective that we are working in our region. You can see this approach both in our relations with the Turkic world and in the regional initiatives we carry out together. Look at the Middle East, the Caucasus, the Balkans, the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. The foreign policy vision set out by our president and the efforts led by Turkey all move in this direction. Therefore, we use Turkey's regional strength, prestige and leadership to bring stability to the region. Unfortunately, in previous periods, the dominant perception of international relations was either competition, submission, or domination. Now we have moved beyond that, embracing a foreign policy based on cooperation, stability, and a more humane and moral approach that benefits everyone. And we continue on this path.
President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, met with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Gabala on Monday. The leaders discussed the development of Azerbaijani-Hungarian relations and exchanged views on expanding partnerships in energy, investment, agriculture and tourism. The role of Hungarian companies in rebuilding Sultanli village in the Jabraili district was also highlighted. Moving to Central Asia, Uzbekistan is expanding its cooperation with American companies within the energy sector. Several major agreements have been signed in recent days, including projects in oil distribution, biofuel production, and modernization of gas infrastructure. Sevil Rajapoja reports from Tashkent.
American energy company Gulf Oil will build up to 100 gas stations across Uzbekistan under a $100 million memorandum signed with Uzbekneftegaz. Fuel will be purchased with the stock exchange or imported independently with no special supply privileges from the state company. The network is expected to increase competition and improve service quality in the retail fuel market. In addition, Allied Biofuels will invest about $5.9 billion in constructing a large biorefinery in the south of the country, in the Khorizm region. The facility will produce sustainable aviation fuel, electrosynthetic fuels, and green diesel using renewable energy sources. The project is designed to generate around 382,000 tons of aviation fuel annually and will be the first one of its kind in Central Asia. during President Shavkat Mirziyoyev's visit to New York for the anniversary session of the United Nations General Assembly at the end of September. Uzbekistan and the US also agreed on projects worth between $3 and $4 billion. The deal focuses on modernization of the gas transportation network and the introduction of advanced technologies in production and infrastructure. The cooperation includes the electrification and renewal of gas compressor stations, as well as border modernization efforts. Companies such as Air Products, Schlumberger, and Baker Hughes are expected to participate, while the U.S. Export-Import Bank may provide financing worth $852 million, according to reports. Uzbekistan says these projects reflect the country's strategy to diversify its energy market, attract foreign investment, and develop both traditional and green energy sectors. It is Sevil Rajapov reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
In regional developments, Afghanistan's economic and diplomatic engagements continue to expand as Kabul strengthens ties with neighbouring and regional partners. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more.
Afghanistan's Minister of Industry and Commerce, Nuruddin Azizi, met with Turkey's ambassador to Kabul, Cenk Onal, to discuss boosting bilateral trade, facilitating transit routes, and encouraging foreign investment in Afghanistan. During the meeting, Ambassador Onal extended an official invitation for Minister Azizi to attend the 5th meeting of Trade Ministers of Economic Cooperation Organization, or ECO, set to take place in Istanbul from November 24th to 26th this year. The Turkish envoy also invited Azizi to participate in the Halal Expo 2025, which will be held in Istanbul from November 27th to 30th, an event expected to draw significant international business interest. These developments follow Afghanistan's recent participation in the 17th ECO summit in Azerbaijan, where Deputy Prime Minister Abdul Ghani Brother represented the country. The gathering emphasized regional economic integration and connectivity. With growing participation in regional forums and talks on key infrastructure projects, Afghanistan appears eager to strengthen its role in the region's economic landscape. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
That's your news this morning. From all of us in the studio, thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.